Hi, everyone, and welcome to the As I Amber podcast. I'm Amber, and I love to talk about music, travel, society, and pop culture. On this wonderful Throwback Thursday, I have special guests to the show, Solomon Hill. Please say hey.
Hey, how you guys doing? Amber, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. So, this was all inspired by a Facebook post I saw of someone saying, if you don't know what this movie is, or you don't know who this little girl is, we can't be friends. And for those who may or may not know, it's the movie was a clip from the 1994 Spike Lee produced classic called Crooklyn. So,
Um,
unless you've been living under a rock or maybe you weren't exposed to certain themes or certain movies growing up, Crooklyn is about a Black family in Brooklyn.
mhm.
And it's the Carmichael family, and they have four rowdy boys and one girl. And her name is Troy, and it's told throughout the perspective of Troy, the only girl, little girl in the house.
Troy the boy.
Troy the boy. And Troy is like, I believe the actress that was portraying Troy was around 9 or 10. So this movie is told from the perspective of a child who grew up in the 70s in Brooklyn, New York. So I want to ask you, when was the first time you saw this movie?
It had to be 96. It
Mm.
had to be because what it was is my mom a lot of times she would be stuck at home with my brother and my sister, sometimes my older brother because my dad would be out working or he would just be out with his friends. And she would find something on during the week or during the weekdays for us to watch. And so she played Crooklyn. And it just started to become like a representation of like kind of like our life. I saw a lot of us in the movie, and so when we wanted to have like peace over calm, Crooklyn was like one of those things that she would go to.
Wow, that's funny that you mentioned it because even though the movie came out in 1994, it's based about life in the 70s.
Hmm.
And in New York, I'm a little Black girl in Georgia. I can't relate to sitting in a brownstone. I'm not a city girl, you know.
Exactly.
No, shout out to JT and Carisha, but I'm just saying, I'm I'm from the country. I am from a small town. So growing up and watching Crooklyn, it still resonated with me. Like I didn't grow up in the 70s. I'm a 90s. I'm a millennial child. I'm a child of the 2000s. Cash money taking over. So with that being said, the brilliance of Spike Lee and
Yeah,
his sister Joey Lee and his brother Sneak Lee. I hope I'm pronouncing the name
I
correctly,
think it's
but
Julie.
it's loosely based off of their life because their mother passed when they were young, and they
Yeah,
grew up in Brooklyn. So this is like their love letter to the city and to her. And one of the things, spoiler alert. So you guys, if you have not seen Crooklyn, stream it, find it on Amazon, rent it for $2 or $3 on
just
Find
buy
It. I have the DVD, so I
just
don't have to worry about that.
buy
But one of the things that was semi autobiographical, from the movie and in their real life was that their mother passed away when they were younger.
Mhm.
Now, I watched this movie at like 5 or 6, and I didn't know what was going on.
Mm-mm.
And it's kind of like that quote that says, if you read your favorite book or watch your favorite series as you get older, the plot doesn't change, but your perspective does.
Mhm.
It hit me like a ton of bricks one day. I watched it as a teenager. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
And I was just like in tears. I was in shambles. And
'Cause
I was
it's
like, "That's what happened?" That's the movie does the acting is done so well because there's a lot of unspoken things in the movie that we just understand or things that went over our heads, but you just get it now that you're an adult.
and see, that's the thing about the movie. You know, I still feel like Malcolm X Crooklyn, like side A, side B, like those are his best works without a doubt. It's just so many scenes in there that just stuck in my head. Even if it's them playing jump rope, even if it's, the dad killing the rat, the dad being a land, like it just became a symbol, I think, for the Black family experience with the mom and dad. And like you said, for me, when the mother passes, I just still remember, her waking up and nobody, and her mama's not there, and she just gets sad, starts throwing up, and I get sad. I'm like, dang man, her mama not there no more. But she becomes the mini mom, and it was such a well done movie. It just has a fine place in my heart. Like even if he weren't to do any other movies after that, those two will always be my favorite movies by him.
One of the things that I appreciate about the film is the attention to detail in the soundtrack
Oh, the
because
soundtrack is classic.
they never said what year it was.
Yep, they
But
didn't.
we have context clues based off the language, the outfits, what's going on in the world. There was no tablet, there was no PlayStation, Xbox, no cell phone. This is the 70s because it's like a golden age in a weird way
It
because
was.
this is before the crack epidemic destroyed inner city communities in the 80s and 90s.
Mhm.
This is before, it's like kids still went outside and played. And I think, Solomon, our generation as millennials, we're like the last generation that went outside to play.
We
Now,
were.
I ain't really like going outside because I ain't like to sweat. I was one of the little bougie kids that want to stay inside. But when I did go outside, these games like the double dutch, hopscotch, patty cake, Miss Mary Mac, all the little neighborhood or kiddie games that kids play, it kind of resonated in my spirit a little bit. I grew up in the suburbs, but one summer before my granny passed away, I would go to her house every day that summer. She lived in the hood. Candy lady, the fleece cup, like,
Yeah.
so when I see Crooklyn, I immediately think of that time and how kids were unsupervised, but they were supervised in a weird
Yeah.
way. It was
Yeah.
like kids just had a free for all or just riding bikes and no one was thinking about someone getting abducted. It was just you was
It was just
outside
good
all
time.
day and I was outside sometimes. I wasn't like we outside, but I was just outside sometimes.
Nah, but you really hit on it. It was like a golden era because there was no Wayne Williams murders or
Mhm,
kidnappings.
mhm.
There were no, you did have drugs in the 70s, but you didn't have crack. And when I watch the movie, I just think about all the levels of society is studied. Like when she went down south and never heard crickets before. Like that's something that as a kid I didn't think about because I lived in the South. But then when I would visit my cousins in Philly, why y'all talk like that? Or why? And then that's when I started learning, oh, it's different. It's nuance to the black experience, which they covered. And even the dad being a dreamer, the dad loving to play, the trumpet, and the mama like, but just not paying the bills. As I get older now, I look at those dynamics. Like I could see how that would put a strain on a family. I can see
Yeah.
how money will put a strain on, how well you can raise kids. It's
And
just one of those movies that it covered a lot of ground and it focused on a lot of experience. I still be 1, 2, 3, the devil's after me. Like I'm at the house
4,
thinking of
5, 6. He's
he's
always
always
into
throwing
me.
sticks. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's stuck in your head.
And Spike Lee is a visionary. When you talked about when the character Troy goes down south to Virginia with
Mhm.
her aunt Queenie and well, not aunt, but Aunt Song, and the
Uh,
dog is Queenie. But it might as well been called Aunt Queenie because she loved her
Queen.
dog more than
Oh.
Viola. When I saw that as a child, I was like, Troy did that. Like, they didn't
Mhm.
say she did, but it was kind of like,
Understood.
Troy,
That
did you do that?
Troy did.
And I thought it was really interesting. Like you said, when she was coming to the South, the camera lens changes. Everything gets more narrow and upside down because for a
Mhm.
child, that's a culture shock. That's her
Mhm.
family, but like you were saying, regionally, and you think about the Great Migration and how so many Black people from the South went up north, and now it's kind of like an opposite Great Migration with the
Yeah.
way rent is. A lot of people who are out west or up north are coming to the South for
Mhm.
different quality of life. And I often think about pre-gentrification. I've been to
Mm,
New York a couple of times in my life. I don't recall going to Brooklyn, but from what I read about Brooklyn, this not the Brooklyn that's
oh
Crooklyn set
no.
in.
Oh no.
Brooklyn is like I have my iced latte and my dog's yoga mat,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
it's not what it was
And
in the
those
70s.
brownstones are, super high price. Like I haven't got the chance to visit New York yet, but I'm gonna speak it hopefully in a year so I can. But
Mhm.
I've read a lot about like Dapper Dan talk a lot about where the way Harlem has changed and just New York in general. And it's, you know, Spike Lee does a good job in his movies. They're like time capsules. You look at Do the Right Thing, you'll see New York in a certain time period. You look at Crooklyn, you'll see New York in a certain time period. Even if you look at his more recent movies, you'll just see that part of New York in its time, and it'll also take aim at it. And I think that's one of his strengths as a director. He just knows how to capture the time. When I first saw She's Gotta Have It, I was like, oh, I could this you could tell this was set in a certain time period, and I could tell that was probably super impactful in that time. I'm like, oh, in the 80s, this would be ham. This would probably go crazy in the
Yeah.
80s. So,
One thing that I appreciate about this movie is the casting.
oh
A
man,
lot of times when you see a movie about a black family, no shade to other series,
nah, let's
but
keep it real
the family members don't look like they're related. Or, I mean, I know as black people, we come in various skin tones, but
though.
I appreciated that the mom was dark skinned and the dad was dark skinned, and their children looked like they could come from them.
Yes,
And the
yes.
funny thing about it, as a brown skinned little girl in the South, at that time, you got to remember 95, 94, 95. Raven Simone was popping, Journey Smollett was popping
Yeah.
as like the little child actors. Those are representation of blackness. It wasn't until like, Brandy, she was a teenager when I was a
And
little
Keith
one.
Knight was a teenager too, so
So
um,
so when I saw the actress Zelda Harris, I was like, "Oh, she looked like me."
mhm,
And
mhm.
I think that was really groundbreaking. I mean, some people it's just the movie, but I think representation mattered, especially in the 1990s. A lot of coming of age films were told about don't be a menace to South Central LA while drinking your juice in the hood. Like it wasn't told from a child's point of view all the time.
You're right.
And so I think the coming of age movie that men, women, boys, girls, black, white, I think so anybody can relate to something in the movie, whether you had an annoying sibling, whether they touch on every topic in a weird way.
They
They
touched on
they
everything.
touched on everything from the little slick comments the little girls were making with each other, like, "Oh, you think you are that because you got Puerto Rican in you, or your hair
Yeah.
is this, or you black, are you stupid?" Or, things that kids really
Really
say.
say,
And that was in the 70s. So now we got all this gentle parenting, sensitivity, but they were just raw. These kids was
nah,
cussing each other out like they still do, but it was just the innocence and the funniness of kids trying to curse and they don't know how to.
it was and that's the thing, like, it was authentic. You know what I'm saying? Like, she going to the store, she's seeing the Jays, the junkies, they sniffing glue. When she went to the store and saw the was that RuPaul character, like the
Yes, a transgender woman.
I didn't know I had never seen a transgender person at that age, but I was just like,
Hmm.
that looks different.
Yeah,
Put my
yeah.
finger on it. I can't put my finger on it, but that looks different. And so for him to put that in, for him to put in, I'm gonna be honest, Delroy Lindo felt like my extra dad after watching that. I was like, this is my dad in every movie, like, because he played the roles. I was like, dang, he does remind me of how my dad is. It's just
Wow.
you know, representation was key, and I think people don't understand. Like, I think of the Inkwell. That's probably like the only other coming of age that I can think of with like a young black cast where
Mhm.
you're like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. And Crooklyn tapped on that. In the 90s, that's why we love it so much because it was all different shades of black representation. You could find somebody that looked like you. You could find somebody doing something you want. You could watch a movie and be like, yeah, that's like us. Like I still look at the Wood and the Brothers and be like, yeah, that's kind of how we be. And that's the key. And now we're just duplicating what they did then, you know?
Yeah, one more thing that I think this movie kinda touches on is the amazingness of Alfre Woodard. I think she is
Man,
so
yeah.
underrated.
She's a
Like,
hell of an
people
actress.
on Twitter are always talking about, "Oh, I got the bike Holiday," Holiday Heart, and I'm like, "She's bigger than
She
Holiday
was
Heart."
bigger than
Like,
Holiday. I didn't even
let's
see her in
give
Holiday
Miss
Heart.
Alfre Woodard her things.
Yeah,
She is
give her
acting
flowers. She
down, okay? And I just wish that people would like put some respect on her name because she has her whole like credits is legendary. And I don't have time to go through all her movies, but she's just one of those actresses that like you believe that she is that person.
she plays the role convincingly. Like the way she played the mom, I'm telling you, that was like our life. My mama was like Alfre Woodard to us as far as like the disciplinarian, the stern one.
Mhm.
My dad was probably more so like I'm a little bit looser with my parenting.
Uh-huh.
So it was pretty accurate to me. My sister was kind of like Troy the Boy because she had two, three brothers, and I guess I was probably the one. I ate three peas, maybe, spitting it up. And my older brother with the glasses was a Wendell. So I just saw a lot of representation in it. And the part I think I liked was they weren't rich, but they weren't poor. It was like a middle class representation of Black America, and I think we haven't really changed much from the '70s, like in a lot of aspects. So it's I look at it and I think that's why I appreciate '70s music. I be listening to Aretha because of that soundtrack, like rock steady in the room, just getting hard. So
I just think that the beginning of the movie and the end capture it's like they balance each other out because we know at the beginning of the movie is people make the world go round by the stylistics,
stylistic.
and then at the end is Wu Child.
Hmm.
And the way the songs, I know that budget was probably limited with all the credits and having to go through to get those songs in that movie, but they fit so well.
Man,
And I appreciate one of the things that I appreciate about Crooklyn and a lot of Spike Lee joints are the lessons.
yes,
So remember when Troy's brother he makes a decision to go to the Knicks game
yeah.
instead of his dad's piano recital, or his dad
Mhm.
had a jazz recital,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he loved his Knicks. But when he came home, he realized that wasn't the best decision to make. And they never said it. It wasn't some long-winded, boys and girls. This is what happens. It was just like you saw the unspoken tension and the
Mhm.
disappointment or the happiness or both duality of feelings in a child actor. Those children were amazing.
They played those roles. He came in. How was the game? They won. And I mean, you could feel the thing. I really went to go see. I love Walt Clyde Frazier. He went to see Walt Clyde Frazier, but he missed his dad's. And like I said, the actors were amazing. The score was amazing. The levels of stories that they took on were amazing. It showed the '70s neighborhood experience for Black people, and it's one of the ones that when we look up in years from now, it's gonna be one of the things we can say. But this was how it was at this time. This was an
So,
example of the '70s.
before we go, I do you think that I don't want anyone to touch this movie? I
Please
don't
don't
need a
remake it.
Crooklyn remake.
Please don't remake it.
I don't want anybody to remake Crooklyn. However, if they want to touch this movie, the only person that's going to do it is Spike Lee and Joy Lee. the
Yeah,
sister. The
yeah,
reason why I would love for them to do Where's Troy? I often think about that character, and I know the actress Zelda Harris who played her. Um, she was in He Got Game. She was in Babysitter's
yeah.
Club, and then she kind of like disappeared. I guess she went into regular life, and she's in a rock band, or she has
Mm.
her own band now. And I follow her on Instagram because I always think about these child actors. Like she had such an iconic role at a young age, and I often think about if Troy was in 2022 in Brooklyn,
Man.
because the movie came out in 94. So she's
Mhm.
in our age, the actress is in our age bracket. But if they were to do a sequel, I want to see Troy grown up. Did she leave New York? Did she become gentrified? Like, is she fighting for her rights in her neighborhood? Like,
That's a good question.
I
I
would
would love to
love
see
to
it.
see that. Do you think that they would do a sequel or something like that?
I think Spike is real hesitant. I don't know, I can't say, but I think Spike would be hesitant to touch a classic like that,
Mhm.
but I would love to see it. But then he touched She's Gotta Have It. So maybe,
Yeah.
I thought that was something that he wouldn't touch. So
Yeah. One more thing about Spike Lee joints is so many to choose from.
it is.
Whether it's He Got Game, She Hate Me, so many clockers.
Malcolm
It's
X,
just a lot that can be broken down. But I appreciate you for hopping on this call about Crooklyn because I know I'm not the only 90s, 80s baby who liked that movie. It's a lot of people that enjoyed it.
no, definitely. And I appreciate you even getting on the call with me. Sorry, I know it's probably lagging a little bit, but I appreciate you. It was worth it to talk about this subject.
Yeah, no problem. So, hey, y'all got to let us know what's your favorite Spike Lee joint? Have you ever seen Crooklyn? And how did your perspective change? Or what is your perspective now as an adult watching Crooklyn? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Check out the As I Amber podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And on YouTube. I'm trying to get on YouTube now. So, yeah, I appreciate you all listening. Do you have any other news to share? Good. Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. Good night or good morning. Bye.
Bye.